How's everyone doing? And welcome into the first installment of the Saturday mock draft series here on the SFS channel. I'll be doing this every week going forward throughout the rest of draft season here for 2021 fantasy football, in addition to the mock draft Monday episodes that I've been posting weekly as well. So keep your eye out for that if you're new around here, and stay tuned to the channel for daily fantasy football videos and analysis for this 2021 season. But I want to keep this intro short, not waste too much time, so let's hit the intro and get right in to the draft. As always, if you've been watching with me for a while now, I try and keep things fresh and to not use the same pick over and over again. So we're going with the 1.5 overall spot. I've been going all over the board recently. I just made a 9th overall pick draft on Monday. I believe I did the 12th overall pick and the 10th overall pick in a 10-team league not too long ago. So we've been shuffling up the board. I think 2 weeks back I did the first overall pick. So just to keep things in mind here for today's video, once again, this is a full PPR mock draft for 2021 fantasy football. So keep that in consideration as I make my picks for today's video. Unfortunately, the player I thought I was going to get at this spot, Alvin Kamara, is off the board, but I have no issue taking Saquon Barkley here with this first overall pick. I think Saquon's going to come back real strong. I think that he's going to be an incredibly good pick. And for players who can get him at the 1.5 overall draft spot in any league format, it's an absolute steal. It's an absolute win. This is a player you want to be picking this season and a draft selection that you want to be making. So I have no issues, and I was disappointed that Kamara wasn't there, but I actually have Saquon ranked higher in my draft guide rankings regardless. So Saquon's a great pick for me. I'm not too upset, or I'm not upset whatsoever with making that draft choice there. Love to see Travis Kelce in a full PPR league going at the 1.8 here. I honestly think he's more valuable than a Tyreek Hill at this point just because of the positional advantage he gives you. And a weird little note here is that Travis Kelce actually came out the other day, and it was totally random. It was an off-script thing that he was doing a show, and or he was on someone's live or something like that, and he actually said that his name is pronounced Travis Kelce. So I guess we've been saying it wrong all this time. I'm going to keep saying Kelce because I think that sounds way cooler, and he said he goes by both names. Obviously, he actually said that Kelce he accepts as his nickname. So weird little interesting note for you there if you hadn't heard that story already, but I thought that was quite odd that him and his brother Jason Kelce, or Jason Kelce, who is a center for the Philadelphia Eagles, we've been saying Kelce for years. Like, these aren't new players to the league, and their name's been pronounced wrong all this time. So something odd to touch on here, but great situation for me at this 2.8 spot. I've got an excellent choice. I can either go Calvin Ridley here, who is my top wideout left on the board, or I could turn around and take Cam Akers, which I think is the intelligent pick to make here. There's still some nice depth at the running back spot. I like me some Najee Harris, some Antonio Gibson, a J.K. Dobbins, but boy, oh boy, Cam Akers at the 2.8 is an absolute steal. This is a player with all the upside in the world. You pair him with Saquon Barkley, there isn't a much better ceiling combination for an RB1 and an RB2 in fantasy drafts. Like, this is literally a dream scenario. I've got Cam Akers ranked ahead of Joe Mixon, Austin Eckler, and Aaron Jones, who all went ahead of him here in today's mock draft. So the sleeper ADP is playing out pretty well in our favor in this video, with a lot of the players I really like falling to me early on in today's video. So Najee Harris, and something to actually touch on here before I make this next draft pick. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, rush this video too much, because I want to get you guys good information, make sure I've got you guys hooked up and set up with all the best content and knowledge that you can get for this fantasy season. If you'd like to be a part of Monday's video, where I'll be doing a subscriber mock draft, we'll see if Eric wants to come join me on camera again for that episode. You got to head down to the description of this video, click the invite link to the free SFS community Discord, where you'll be able to join. It's essentially just a big old group chat party of viewers here on the channel who want to have an extra avenue of connection with me, who want to be able to feel free to ask questions at any time of day, and basically it pops up on my computer whenever I get a message on there. So whenever I'm on my computer, I can see that you sent me a message. I can go check that out, get you your advice, your question answered. And I just talk sports in there. I'm happy to talk Literally, I mean, this is definitely a fantasy football channel and a football content channel, but I love basketball. I'm wearing a Chris Middleton Bucks jersey right now for my hometown team in the finals right now. I'll just talk sports with you. I'm in there to have a great time with all of you, connect with you guys on a deeper level, and just get to know the viewers of the channel a bit better, because I want to make this the most interactive channel in the fantasy community and just have a great opportunity for you all to get involved and get a piece of the action here. So if you want to be in next week's video, Mock Draft Monday, I'll be filming that probably Sunday afternoon. All you got to do, again, click that Discord link invite. It's absolutely free, and you can get yourself hooked up with that invite link to join that video. We had one last week, and it was on pretty short notice too, and we had a good turnout. So that should be a lot of fun. If eventually we could fill out all 12 of these spots in a mock draft, that'd be sweet as well. So here in the third round now, I'll take a break before we plug anything else here for the channel. Shameless plug alert. I do like the prospect of taking a Darren Waller at this 3-5 draft position. If you've been around here on the channel, you absolutely know I am Darren Waller over George Kittle for this fantasy season. You talk about the target share numbers, the touchdowns over the past 2 seasons. Everything points in the direction, and the fact that the lack of target competition for Las Vegas in terms of Darren Waller's fantasy productivity, everything points towards Darren Waller being my tight end 2 this season. Maybe a guy comes out of left field and overtakes him. Tight ends are one of the most unpredictable positions in fantasy football, but I just don't see the avenue where George Kittle has a safer floor and honestly a higher ceiling, although he might be the better all-around player. But nonetheless, blocking doesn't matter in fantasy football. What we're looking for is raw receiving yardage, touchdown counts, and all that good stuff. So Travis Kelce, he's on an island by himself. He's untouchable at this point. Him and Pat Mahomes, he's got 25% of that target share in that Kansas City offense. Absolute monster. A step below him is that Darren Waller topping off that tier 2, which I think George Kittle is still a part of realistically, but he is definitely a bump down from Darren Waller in my opinion. So that's the pick going to be here, I think. I absolutely love me some of these third round receivers as well. Terry McLaurin, Allen Robinson, Keenan Allen, these are some great value picks. But dang, I feel so good about my running back group right now. And to set myself above the competition at another position would just feel excellent here. So I can't pass on Darren Waller. I'm really liking how this draft is playing out actually from this 1.5 overall draft position. And I honestly didn't expect this. I did a mock draft from the 1.6 draft spot, again, a few episodes back. And it turned out okay, but I think that the way this video is turning out here, especially in a full PPR mock, this is excellent stuff that we're getting here in the first 3 rounds of this draft. And I think it's because that PPR format, you're seeing the wide receiver positions and those pass catchers being pushed up the board, and that let a lot of great running back talent fall to me in those first 2 rounds. Now Darren Waller goes here after there was quite a heavy, it wasn't like a complete wide receiver run, but we did see 5 of them go in the second round. So that was important to note there. Let's check out the running back group because we're always trying to stay on top of the competition in that department. Unfortunately, David Montgomery and Chris Carson, 2 guys I really like as that late 3rd round, early 4th round running back spot. They're both off the board here, so not loving what I'm looking at here with Kareem Hunt, Travis Etienne, James Robinson. There's just too many question marks there. I do like the idea. Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott here, all potential options with my next 2 selections. Not going to sell myself into anything quite yet here. I want to make sure that I don't like any other options better on the table at this moment. Another thing that's important to note here is although I do love a Darren Waller in the 3rd round, I am absolutely a huge fan and advocate for taking Mark Andrews and TJ Hawkinson very early in fantasy drafts. And I'm not saying to reach them per se, but I'm saying that if you can get them late 4th round, early to mid 5th round, that's excellent territory to get yourself that positional advantage. That's kind of the territory where I stopped taking tight ends in the first 5 rounds of the draft board. You know, Kyle Pitts has a lot of upside. It's undeniable. The talent is excellent, but there's a lot of risk involved there. We've never seen him play an NFL game. I know that his prospect profile is as good as there's been in a long time, but you got to see it to believe it. And I think that for fantasy owners and fantasy players drafting him, he's literally going the 45th pick on the draft board. So within the first 4 rounds, obviously in a 12-team league, there's 48 picks in the first 4 rounds. That's a bit high for me. So after Hockenson and Andrews fall off the board, I'm a bit more hesitant, and I like to wait very late to take my tight ends because you can get a guy like a Rob Gronkowski who is a simple touchdown streamer. If he catches you a touchdown pass, boom, 6 fantasy points. You never know what's going to happen between him and Tom Brady. As long as Tom is his quarterback, I trust him to produce good enough starting tight end numbers more weeks than not at a position where after the first tier or two, it's really shaky production the rest of the way out. So I'm still not even a fan of taking your middle round tight ends, as talented as they might be, because utilization and offensive usage really is what it comes down to for a lot of these guys, and a lot of them don't have that great production and usage in their offenses that we would love to see from them. But nonetheless, we will get on a tight end rant at another time here. I'm going to be honest, for the second straight mock draft in a row, Kyler Murray looks really good to me here. I like the wide receiver crop, but at the same time, I'm not so sure if I can completely set myself above the competition level based off of who is still available on the board. I feel like I might like the group and the players available just as much if I wait till the 5-5, and I'm not so sure that Kyler Murray is still going to be there on the board if I wait until that draft position. What my thought process here looking at this wide receiver group is, if you can see this list up on your screen, I know it's a bit reduced in size because we changed the layout of our mock drafts and all of our episodes here, adding in just some informational stuff to make sure you guys are able to be exposed to as much of our content as possible and take advantage of all the free features we have for you. The draft guide collection, that you'll see that up on your screen. That's not free. There are a lot of giveaway opportunities, though. You can get yourself access to those by joining that Discord channel. Again, the Discord is completely free to join and is a great experience if you want to jump in there and make that an even better experience for future fantasy football community members who become a part of that. You'll be able to hop in there, join that up, and you know the rest. I've been talking about it a lot here over the last few videos, but basically my thought process here for this wide receiver group is I love Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods in fantasy this season. I think Matt Stafford is going to make all the difference for that Rams offense. However, DJ Moore and Adam Thielen, I have my question marks about. Both of them are a bit shaky volume plays right now, as Justin Jefferson, as a rookie who literally didn't start the first 2 weeks of the season, came in and outpaced Adam Thielen in the target department, and without the 14 touchdown passes he had, I think that's a bit risky for him. DJ Moore's got a lot of target competition between Robbie Anderson and Terrace Marshall in that offense. So although he is very talented in his own right, I don't love the idea there. But you're telling me I've got Robert Woods, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, and Kenny G, even Tyler Lockett down here, that could all fall to me. I don't feel amazing about them as wide receiver ones. I'm really talking fast here because my timer's winding down. But we'll make the draft pick there, Kyler Murray, and continue to talk about this as the players come here. So we see Kupp goes off the board. Robert Woods, that is killer. Goes one pick before our draft selection. So at the end of the day, I'm still really happy with CeeDee Lamb here, and it looks like he's going to be my draft choice and my wide receiver one for this team. Now, this is not exactly what I would say is an ideal situation for the wide receiver position, but this is a perfect representation of my draft strategy for the 2021 fantasy season. Usually, I am not going to be in the camp that takes a Kyler Murray in the 4th round, although I do value him highly as a must-draft player in comparison to a Pat Mahomes or a Josh Allen. You see these other, well, actually, Josh Allen's ADP slipped down quite a bit in this mock draft, and others, he typically tends to go near the mid to late 3rd round. However, as I was saying, why are we picking Pat Mahomes here at the 2.3? I talked about this in my must-own players video with Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray being features in that list of players I listed off there. The upside, the production, the ceiling value they give you is just as good as Pat Mahomes, and you can draft them 2 rounds later. Like, there is no positional advantage you're getting here except for an incredibly safe floor, which I would argue all 3 of these players present to you. Again, literally 2 rounds and 2 picks later from Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen, his ceiling, he can go toe for toe. Lamar Jackson averages the most fantasy points per game of any player over the last 2 seasons. Back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing years. The floor is there. The ceiling is there too. He's upgraded his pass-catching weapons this offseason as well. In the Cardinals, Kyler Murray led the NFL, or at least quarterbacks in the National Football League last season, in rushing touchdowns, in addition to playing in an air raid system where he's throwing the ball all over the lot all game, and his top wide receiver had 160 targets last year. That's insane production, and it's going to keep getting better in terms of his passing numbers because he is still a baby in terms of the NFL and his age for the league. He's just getting started. Kyler might see a regression in his rushing touchdown numbers, but the rushing yardage, the rushing attempts, those will be there. He's an incredibly valuable pick. So what this comes for full circle for me to say is that the CeeDee Lamb will be the pick here. I just haven't made it yet because I want to make sure I have enough time to talk you guys through this process. And again, I'm not trying to rush through things. Obviously, you can skip through the video if you want to just see the picks I'm making, but I love doing mock drafts, and the reason I decided to add in an additional mock draft every week as opposed to a specific video is that every mock's a little bit different. Every mock, I'm drafting different players, I'm going over different situations, and I think that that's just the best way for me to expose my audience to the most broad array of players, analysis on different team situations, team building here, different strategies we can go about roster construction. And I think there's just a lot of things I can touch on and get to in one video, whereas if I'm zoning in on one specific focused topic, it might be harder for you to quickly become well-versed as a fantasy player. So if you watch 2 or 3 of these mocks, you're going to get exposed to a lot of different information, get a lot of different content at your fingertips to utilize, and then apply that to the other videos I make that are more specific, and then figure out how you want to formulate your own draft strategy to have a really successful fantasy season. So ultimately, that's what I'm here to do. I'll be here the entire fantasy season answering questions and weekly live streams. I'll be having that Discord server open again, so if you want to ask me about lineup advice and such, you're going to be able to have opportunities to head in there, ask questions, comment stuff down below, please. I'm happy to answer all of your questions and help you be the best fantasy players you can be this season. And I want to have you guys along for the ride all year long, because ultimately that's the best part and the most enjoyable part of the season for me is when I get to interact with all of you. So please be active on the channel. Please participate in community events. That's what makes this stuff awesome, makes it really fun. And obviously, the more we have doing it, the stronger the community base is. And then that just makes the experience better for everyone else. So CeeDee Lamb will just go ahead and make the pick here. I've been rambling for a long time. But essentially, the very, very long road to what I was trying to say here, after getting off on multiple different points, is that I have set myself a positional advantage at the quarterback. I would argue the running back position, with Barkley and Akers being an elite top 2, and the tight end position. I have what I would argue to be potential, I would argue that it's a very safe thing to say that Kyler Murray, Saquon Barkley, Cam Akers, and Darren Waller will all finish as top 12 players at their fantasy positions. Now, obviously, we're hoping for your Barkleys, your Wallers, and your Murrays to finish much higher than just 12th. But the point being, they will all be number 1 fantasy options at their position, meaning that whatever your league size is, they will pencil in as a player ranked at the bottom. Their low end is the roster size or the league size that you have. So being a tight end 12 would mean that you're still a tight end 1 in the 12-team leagues. And then if you scale that down to an 8-team league per se, being a tight end 1 means you're top 8 fantasy tight end. So basically what I'm saying here is that I have number 1 starting options at every position in my lineup so far. CeeDee Lamb also has the potential to finish as that because his upside is so high. And the main focus of why I faded wide receiver till later down the board here is that the positional depth is so much more vast than it is at running back per se, because here in the 6th round, we're already picking rookie running backs. I mean, if we look at the running back, Myles Gaskin and Kareem Hunt are going right now. Like, the names are just not very impressive at this stage of the draft that make you say, wow, I need to make that player a member of my team. Wow, I need to make that draft pick. So I feel really great about how the starting lineup is unfolding here. And then I look at these wide receiver names, and again, I just really like a lot of the players down here on the board. I think there's a lot of room for production, and I think there's a lot of potential and possibilities because, again, you're starting an NFL team that is rolling out roughly 2 to 3 wide receivers on any given play, and you're passing most teams closer to 60% than they are to that 50% marker. So there's just a lot of production to be had and a lot of opportunity for positional depth that we have to take advantage of and scoop up the depth or lack thereof at other positions while we have the chance. So the picks that I love here at this spot, Tee Higgins, Cortland, Sutton, 2 players I think are being slept on heavily right now. Obviously, Sutton, if he didn't have that injury, I think would be being drafted, that is, a lot higher than he is currently going right now, as you see a late 6th round pick. He's going to bounce back this season. I might make a bounce back video here in the coming weeks or so, where I'll just talk about some fantasy disappointments from 2020 and project how I think those players will rebound into 2021 and put up better stat lines. But Tee Higgins is one of my favorite value plays right now. I have to draft him and make him my second wideout in this lineup. It'd be awesome if Cortland fell to me here, and he actually does. So I have the opportunity to pair a Cortland Sutton with a Tee Higgins and CeeDee Lamb combo. These are all players with great upside. But what I was going to say about Tee Higgins is he's got the size, the frame, and the athletic ability, and the hands, I might add, to be a touchdown hog and a production monster. He is now playing, and he stepped into the number one role. I will say that. He was very impressive, and I would argue was the best wideout on that Bengals team last year. He was producing touchdown numbers and putting up really solid performances without Joe Burrow on the field last year. So not only did I love what I saw from him as a pass catcher last season, but you add Jamar Chase into the lineup, he's automatically going to be seeing the now number 2 corner at worst for the opposing team. And yeah, maybe they won't shadow Jamar Chase every play, but this now lightens coverage on Tee Higgins, who, again, I just said has phenomenal size, speed. I think his hands are great. He's got all the tools you can look for, and maybe he sees a reduction in volume and passes thrown to him because Tyler Boyd's still there. We know he's solid, and maybe you could even argue that Tyler Boyd was the number 1 option last year because A.J. Green was a shell of himself and not the same player at all that we've seen in the past. It just, the arguments, the more you try and argue that Tee Higgins wasn't a very, very impressive player last season and won't translate into this season, the more I like him, because that's going to make his ADP fall, and that's going to, his potential upside is just going to keep climbing and climbing, while his floor, as it is relative to a community perspective, just keeps dropping. So I love the value I can get from Tee Higgins. Again, CeeDee Lamb doesn't have the best floor either, I would argue. I'd say Amari Cooper probably has a better floor in that offense, but capitalizing on these young playmakers, they are explosive, they are hungry for targets, points, touchdowns. These guys are going to put up really great stat lines for our teams this year, and we don't want to be the guys that miss out because we're concerned that they aren't the number 1 alpha in their offense. There is going to be plenty of wide receivers that are incredibly productive this year that are not the number 1 option on their team. So scanning this running back group one more time, Orojo seems nice here, but I do see a lot of value. I just saw Trey Sermon up here, Mike Davis, Michael Carter. We're talking about running back 3s. These aren't players that I think I need to pull the trigger on right now. I think it's more important to get that upside in the positional depth right now at the wide receiver position, and it kind of seems like I'm just filling out my roster right now, which is something I don't advocate to do, but that's actually not what I'm trying to do right here. I think that the best value at this moment on the draft board is simply at the wide receiver position, and these are the players that give me the most league-winning upside, so that's my reasoning for making these draft choices. So we'll go Cortland Sutton here at the 7-5. It was really great that he fell down to us that far. He's got the chance to be the wide receiver 1 again for Denver. He had a pretty bad knee injury. It's not going to be a cakewalk for him to recover from, and dang it, Brandon Cooks went off the board. I was really hoping I could get him and talk about him a bit in today's video. Oof, and it looks like I might need to pull the trigger on my next running back here because the 2 guys I just talked about last round are now off the board. Despite the fact that it looks like a bit of a reach here, I do not want to risk losing out on my guy, Michael Carter, so we'll pencil that pick in here, but we'll just wait a second to push the draft button so I can talk about my pick more. Jerry Jeudy is going to see a lot of volume in this offense. Noah Fant is incredibly talented. KJ Hamler has a lot of upside, a lot of skills, but again, Sutton's coming back from that injury. I think he might get off to a little bit of a rocky start, but regardless if it's Teddy or if it's Drew Lock, no one on this football team has the intangibles to make the red zone catches and the playmaking ability in the end zone that Cortland Sutton has. Maybe Noah Fant's got it, but he hasn't shown us on a consistent basis that he can A, stay healthy, and B, command the target share that Sutton was getting prior to his injury last season and the season prior. So I think the potential is there. I definitely need to invest into a couple more solid options at the wide receiver spot in case he ends up busting, but I think it's more likely than not he'll get back to the numbers we expect from him. He will obviously not have the best quarterback play in the world, but I don't expect this Broncos team to finish any higher than 3rd in their division. They're going to be trailing a lot in games, passing the ball late, trying to catch up. So I think it's a spot where we can at the very least expect him to put up quality wide receiver 2 numbers, and for a wide receiver 3 in my lineup, that is very fair for me here. So Michael Carter is the pick for me at the 8.8 spot. Plain and simple, I needed a running back 3, and the board is getting very scary and shaky thin at that position, and I didn't want to miss out. If I have an injury, I'm going to need someone to step in and play that role, and I really, just to be honest, didn't feel comfortable with any of these remaining players playing my running back 2 spot in the event that 2 players who have been dinged up throughout their careers go down to injury. Saquon Barkley's coming back from an ACL. Cam Akers, really love the talent. The explosiveness is incredible, but he didn't see anything significant last year, but he had his fair share of bumps and bruises that held him out of action. So not trying to get screwed over by that. We end up taking a safe pick in Michael Carter, who maybe doesn't start week 1, but very early on, I expect him to take over that Jets backfield, head in there, be a really great option and check down blanket for Zach Wilson out of the backfield. Put up, again, this is a PPR league. I love the potential, the floor he has as a pass-catching back that's going to give you value in that phase of the game, which I think is incredibly valuable and undervalued right now for a player like Michael Carter. So maybe we're not picking him too high. I think that he should maybe see an increase in his ADP, to be honest, at the current moment. His size is a bit small, so I can see where players might be a bit worried about his potential as a goal line player, but at the end of the day, I think that for a rookie running back, he's got fresh legs, a young talent. He'll be hungry to get in there and get some plays. I think he'll come in and at the very least finish as a top 24 running back play if he gets as many starts as I think he could have and stays clean for the whole season. So this next pick, I've got 2 really interesting prospects here. So these are 2 players I relatively haven't touched on at all, and I still see wide receivers I like, so we can wait a bit longer for that. 2 running backs I haven't nearly at all touched on this offseason are Zach Moss and Damian Harris. Their draft guide profiles are coming up here. I'll be making those probably within the next week or so. My goal is to have my numbers 100 through 150 finished by the end of next week. So next Sunday, that's the goal, to have that top 150 out. I'm going to be doing 250 draft profiles here, so 50 per week through the rest of July. August 1st, or hopefully early in the first week of August, is my target deadline to have all of those profiles done for you guys. What I do for you, if you haven't checked out the draft guide collection yet, is every single player, and I've got other stuff on there as well, but I have my positional rankings and my big board top 250. Every player in that big board top 250 has a draft guide profile where I give them an instant draft grade. I grade their ceiling and their floor out of 10, and then I also give them a risk radar grade, something we do here at SFS, obviously called the SFS Risk Radar, where basically I assess their situation, I assess their ceiling and floor, and I give them a grade out of 10. Obviously 10 out of 10 being they are a risky pick, and a 1 out of 10 being a very safe investment. We've got it color-coded, obviously, like a traffic light, green, yellow, and red, because your green light means go, low risk. Red means stop, don't draft me. You get the point. In addition to that, we do a 2020 recap, a 2021 situational analysis and projection, and then we do an ADP analysis where I take a look at their draft position on the board and break down whether or not it's a good spot to be taking them and the role they should play in your team. So essentially, it's 3 to 4, sometimes even 5 paragraphs typed out. It's broken up into 3 sections, but I do a deep dive into basically every player here, so that's the stuff to be looking forward to here. But the main point here that I want to get to is these 2 running backs. So I just want to fill you guys in that information, but here we go. Zach Moss versus Damian Harris. These are 2 sleeper running backs, I guess you could say, that are being a bit undervalued in fantasy right now, but they definitely have their risks and their limitations, which is why they're not being drafted very high. Damian Harris is rumored to be the shoo-in to be the lead tailback for the Pats this season, although they literally have a laundry list of names involved in the game every year. And Zach Moss is I honestly thought that Zach Moss was a bigger, more bruising back, but he's really not that big at all. I mean, we can take a look at his measurables here. He's bigger in terms of comparing him to Devin Singletary, but 5'10", 215, it is a nicer sized back, but he still doesn't just feel like a goal line monster, which is what I felt like he was being advertised as out of Utah. But anyways, he is the bigger back in that Buffalo offense, but what he's actually really good at and undervalued as is a pass catcher And that's what sets him apart from Damien Harris here and why I'm going to draft him as my RB4 for this team. So I don't love either of those two players, but Damien Harris, in my opinion, is absolutely a floor play, and more of a floor play in standard leagues more so than PPR, because he has little to no passing involvement with that Pats offense. That's James White's job. That's other players. It used to be Rex Burkhead too, but he's out of there now. They're going to be using other players in this offense this season. They've got new running backs involved in that backfield. Ramondre Stevenson, wow, he's one of my favorite players to draft, and his name was completely slipping my mind right at the moment. But regardless, the Pats' backfield is a little bit different than it has been in years past. They've lost some names, but Sony Michel's coming back. James White, like I said. Damien Harris goes there. Ramondre Stevenson. So literally 4 names off the top of my head that are all Pats running backs, and I all expect to have roles and be utilized. But Zach Moss, why he gets the nudge in PPR is, again, receiving involvement, and while he gets vultured on the goal line by his own quarterback, Josh Allen, for the lead or the team lead in the rushing touchdowns category, I still think that he has some standalone value, and being the fact that we think of him as a goal line back that still has usage in the passing game, although Devin Singletary's trademark and best skill might be his utilization there, it's really nice. And again, this is the 9th and going on 10th round that we drafted him in, so very low risk investment here. He's not going to come out and be an RB1. He's just not going to be that. That's not what his fantasy situation tells us, and instantly there I can just kind of debunk the fact that he would finish that high. But especially being in a committee with a few backs involved now, Devin Singletary. Last year they had TJ Yeldon in there every once in a while, and then they actually brought in Matt Breida this offseason. So there are some names just like that Pats backfield, but still I think he has the best skill set in that backfield and the best opportunity to be used productively there. So those are my top 4 running backs. I like the way this team is coming together a lot, actually. This 1.5 pick might be an underrated draft position for me to go forward with the rest of this fantasy season. I see 3 names, the wide receiver spot I love right now: Antonio Brown, Darnell Mooney, Elijah Moore, all players I would absolutely be delighted to have. And Russell Gage down here even farther, Nelson Aguilar. You can see these players are started up because I had them on a watch list for prospects in last week's 5 league winning sleepers episode, which basically just turned into look at all the wide receiver positional depth down here in the late rounds of your draft board. So, I think it might be AB time, and then we hope that Darnell Mooney falls to us. I've been picking a lot of Elijah Moore lately, so I'd love to talk about some Darnell Mooney. We'll go AB here with the 10.8 draft spot. I just think that Antonio Brown's got touchdown upside more than anything. He's not quite the explosive player that he once was, and perfect. We've got more than enough opportunity to get Darnell Mooney, and we'll just pull the trigger there. What it comes down to is his connection with Tom Brady, and the fact that I think that there's going to be so much attention focused on the other players on the field. Like, he is literally the 3rd wide receiver option for this football team, and you can debate whether or not Gronk is ahead of Antonio Brown in the targets department if they all play a full 17-game schedule this year, but he's got upside, and I think that the floor, again, for a player taking this late in the draft, don't expect the floor to be too high, but I think that what we're looking for here is more of an upside play, and he's going to have some good matchups that he can exploit this season. The route running is still pristine, despite the fact that, again, his explosiveness is not quite where it once was. It's worth the draft investment for me there, though, in the late 10th round. Then Darnell Mooney, I would argue I actually like more than Antonio Brown, but I figured he might still be there available on the board for me to take at the 11.5, just based off of this being solely based off of ADP right now and not having anyone else in the draft room with me. I do still think that it would be expected for AB to be picked before Mooney, just based off of the general fantasy assessment of the 2 players. But Darnell Mooney is an exceptional deep route runner, very explosive, and he's finally got a quarterback. I think Justin Fields, who we see just went off the board here within what? Is he not off the board? I just saw him somewhere. Interesting. Oh, I'm blind. Here he is. All right, he doesn't have a picture in Sleeper Fantasy yet. There he is. At the 11-12, he got drafted. I was going to say I just saw him on the board a couple seconds ago. He's finally got a quarterback. And last year, Mooney, if you are updated in the fantasy football meme games, and honestly, it wasn't even a fantasy football meme. It was just an NFL meme. NFL Memes IG is a fantastic account if you are a football fan. Obviously, if you're watching this video, you're a football fan. But They were basically sharing how somebody updated Darnell Mooney's Wikipedia profile to be the father of Jalen Ramsey, since he absolutely demolished him when the Rams played the Bears last season. And I mean, the routes were fantastic, and Darnell Mooney got open many times last season, and then his quarterbacks just airballed passes 5-10 yards away from him on the field, and it was honestly depressing to watch him get so open downfield, and they would just throw a duck and miss him. So Nick Foles, Mitch Trubisky, you guys won't be missed in the starting lineup for the Bears. Andy Dalton will throw a better deep ball to Darnell Mooney, even if he starts 8 games for Chicago this season. So Justin Fields is by far, I think, the best talent from a raw perspective. Coming from a Packer fan that they've ever had, I'm terrified because my quarterback hates my team right now. That I think that Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson could come in here and have just ridiculous seasons. So keep your eye out for them. They've got really nice upside, and Mooney saw a lot of targets for how many games he started last year. So, again, another sleeper pick. I might just triple down here. 3 picks in a row. I'm taking Russell Gage. It's a bit of a reach at this spot based off of ADP. Not too bad, but I like him more than an Amon-Ra St. Brown, who doesn't have a guaranteed starting role just yet. I like him more, I mean, the rest of the players that went after him. Marvin Jones is iffy. He's a seasoned vet and a proven guy, but an Urban Meyer offense, you never know what to expect. Gage was another player on that sleeper video. Look, the targets he saw last year without Julio on the field were fantastic. Matt Ryan has been having to rely on his number 2 option a lot because defenses are just taking away his top option from him and clamping him up, making him throw to someone else. I think Russell Gage can be productive enough, and he actually threw a touchdown pass to Calvin Ridley last season. Little fun fact, if you hadn't been playing or at least paying attention to the Falcons last year. And overall, I think that his floor is incredibly slept on at the spot, and I definitely think there's a ceiling there too, but it's very rare that in the late 12th round you can find a wideout that I think will have the target volume, which will in turn result in floor production and give us stuff that we really like to see out of fantasy players. I'm kind of smelling a little Fitzmagic time here. Since we just tripled down on wide receiver, I don't feel an incredible need to take Nelson Aguilar. Adam Troutman's cool, but we got ourselves Darren Waller, and some of my fantasy advice that I typically go back to again and again is that if you're going to take an early round tight end, don't waste 2 draft picks on one. Just stream a tight end for a week. Darren Waller, unless he gets hurt, is going to be a starter for you every single week of the season. So don't even bother going there. I think that Carson Wentz, the weapons he has to throw to, his ceiling is lower than Fitzmagic, and I'd say their floors are just as risky as one another. So Ryan Fitzmagic. The other, we've been picking a lot of players from my league-winning sleeper players with a lot of upside. On last week's episode, I believe it was it was either a Wednesday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday video. It must have been a Wednesday video because Tuesdays are my ADP battles. But Fitzpatrick was the only non-wide receiver in that video, and plain and simple, his upside is just fantastic. Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, Curtis Samuel, Diami Brown, Adam Humphries, Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick out of the backfield. He just hasn't had that stable of a skill group around him, paired with the elite defense he now plays with in Washington, which will allow him to just let loose, uncork that Fitzmagic vibe, and just yoss the ball all over the field. And he's been getting benched because he's been throwing 2-3 pick games, but when you've got a defense that good, they're going to keep you in the game, and they're not going to get you blown out. And I guess Washington has quarterback competition with Taylor Heineke, but Fitzmagic's the vet in the room. He's the adult, the grown up there. He's a smart guy. He's a playmaker. His ceiling is just as high as anyone when he's in his bag. So watch out for Fitzmagic. He's coming this season. I think he could finish as a top 20 quarterback play if he doesn't get benched too many times this year. As a reserve QB behind Kyler Murray, it wouldn't be all that often that I'd end up starting him, but you never know. The upside is there, and that's what you love to see at any position this late in the draft. So I love clicking the draft button on him here with that spot. Let's check out the running back group, see if I can snatch up some more value. Chuba Hubbard might be one of the best handcuffs in fantasy this season, although I'm not a huge handcuff player. It's not always the most important thing to look for. I would say that in general, you like to handcuff players when you have the starter in front of them, just as an insurance policy, but for the most part, don't get too happy picking handcuff players because they're not, more times than not, they're not going to give you the value you want. Tariq Cohen still got his question marks, his issues. recovering from that ACL, and obviously he has a limited role. It's just a pass-catching back. I could go Tevin Coleman here. That would be an interesting draft choice. Maybe I gamble on Tevin Coleman still being there when I come back, because I think that Chuba Hubbard has the better long-term role in his offense, and as C-Mac was injured about a bunch last season, you never know when this might come in handy. So we'll take Chuba Hubbard here. The thought process behind me taking Tevin Coleman is simply coming down to the fact, and it looks like he actually might get drafted. Yep, there he goes before my draft pick, is that I picked Michael Carter earlier on in the draft in the 8th round. I believe the 8.8, I think, was the draft pick I took him with. Yep, there he is here. Just to give me an opportunity to have the Jets starting back, and although that's not an incredibly valuable backfield when Tevin Coleman is a streaky and inconsistent starter, it would just be nice. You know, I've got my top 2 backs locked down here, but in the meantime, while we wait for Carter to either win that starting job out or wait for Tevin Coleman to hurt his ankle, pull his hamstring, whatever it is that he seems to have every year, it gives us the starting option in that backfield while we wait. But the receiver group that we've put together, I think, is fairly significant enough that they are going to be able to hold down the fort. I could start Russell Gage week 1. I feel like I could start Darnell Mooney week 1. I wouldn't mind starting Antonio Brown in that 3rd wide receiver spot or flex position week 1. The group I've put together here, I feel really great in today's video, and I think that, again, picking these valuable receivers late has shown the positional depth, which is something that I love to do here in these mock drafts, and getting that elite upside at the running back position, the quarterback position, and again, that tight end spot. I really am a fan of how this draft came together today. Maybe the one thing I could have done differently is sat on quarterback for a bit longer and maybe picked a Cooper Kupp or a Robert Woods to be my number 1 option to pair with CeeDee Lamb for this team, but I'm still liking it nonetheless. You could easily add Robert Woods or a Cooper Kupp to this mix, and let's see, 2 rounds later, what were the quarterbacks that were going? Justin Herbert. I would have loved to pair Justin Herbert with those guys, but it's all a matter of your preference. I do think Kyler Murray is the better fantasy quarterback option, but just to show you how things could have played out a little bit differently on the board here if I were to have waited. But one more skill position draft pick is what I'll be looking at for this video, as I still need to invest into a defense, and I am happy to see that the ADP has spread out a bit more for the defensive positions as opposed to them all being picked as a straight streamline in the last round of the draft. Might actually be wise for me to draft one of them here. I can get the Dolphins at the 204, or they should still be there for me. The Dolphins, I think, are highly underrated with all their blitz packages they run and whatnot, having Brian Flores drop some really creative schemes. We've already got 2 quarterbacks. I love the idea of a Cam Newton as a player who can be really good the first half of the season. Maybe I'll just invest into a running back. Let's go with a James White here. He's got standalone value as a pass catcher for the Pats. Not a flashy draft pick, not something that I'm absolutely exuberant about by any means, but he's definitely a guy who, if you're looking, he's the RB5 on this roster, I believe, because I drafted Zack as my RB4. Yeah, fits in perfect with the team here. He could be a flex play, a flex stream if I needed him. That Pats backfield might get dinged up. Maybe you'll see some more work than we're expecting. You see another one of my favorite sleepers down here, Ramondre Stevenson, who, due to the fact I think he's a bit more of a better balanced half PPR standard play, I shied away from in today's video, and I've been picking him virtually every time. So again, trying to get you some more diverse content here and some more unique style stuff for every video. But we ended up getting the Dolphins here. So a good way to end off today's video with James White and the Miami Dolphins defense. I'm feeling good. We'll do a quick roster recap here. Again, one more time, I absolutely loved how today's draft board played out for us. Kyler Murray manning the QB1 spot, Saquon Barkley and Cam Akers as the top 2 dogs at the running back position, CeeDee Lamb, Tee Higgins, Cortland Sutton at the wide receivers positions for the starting lineup. Darren Waller as our tight end. We picked him in the 3rd round. I think an excellent value for my tight end to this season. Great positional advantage there. Michael Carter technically penciled in at that flex spot, but I think any of these receivers could easily be put there as well. Dolphins defense, Zach Moss, AB, Darnell Mooney, Russell Gage, Ryan Fitzmagic with that high upside at the quarterback spot, and then 2 running backs, Chuba Hubbard and James White, with some standalone value that we capitalized on late. So that'll do it for today's Saturday mock draft, and I'll see you guys in the outro. All right, that was the first installment of the Saturday mock draft series here on the SFS channel. Remember, I'll be doing that in addition to the Mock Draft Monday episode that I post at the top of every week, where I do that with subscribers as well. So if you are new around here and if you haven't done so yet, you need to go down and click that free Discord invite link. That'll get you access to joining up those mock drafts and having your draft picks featured here on the channel, where you'll be doing a live mock draft with me. So in the future, when I am live streaming in mid to late August as draft season heats up here, I'll be live streaming and I'll drop that link down in the chat. So if it's not quite filled up by those Discord members who have first come, first served dibs, then you'll have access to join that. But if you want to be able to be the first one in there, pick what spot you're drafting out of and such, you want to be in that Discord and have access to that. Again, you've got so much more than just joining those mock drafts up with me. You'll have fancy advice at your fingertips 24/7. I can't promise I'll be on there all the time, but I will be on there as much as possible and just responding to you guys, talking sports, and everything in between. So before you head out, make sure to give this video a like. I appreciate you all so much and all of your time that you put into supporting my content. I'll see you all next time. Peace out.